Okay, damp stretching. Now for damp stretching, you need a board that will receive pins when you're pinning your work out and that isn't going to dye or stain your work. My dad made me this. I've got several of these. It's just a bit of hardboard and glued onto the top of some cork floor tiles. Now these were already sealed and varnished when he bought them, but I would suggest natural cork. I know some people in class, I don't know if they're in this class, but I know somebody who had one made with natural cork and it doesn't bleed. But all I would say to you is whatever surface you can get bath mats that are cork, you can get wall mounted pin boards that are cork. Whatever you decide to use, check it with a piece of plain cloth first. Do the process I'm going to demonstrate now with a piece of unstitched cloth and see if it bleeds or stains, and if it does you're going to have to seal it with some kind of varnish or sealer to stop it bleeding, otherwise your work will get wrecked. So the other thing you need is a spray. There's nothing in here apart from water out of the cold water tap. This did have something else in it, but that was all poured down the sink. This was washed and washed and washed and washed, so there's nothing left in it. And it's just plain water out of the tap. It doesn't have to be anything more complicated than that. And then pins to pin out. Now, you can use thumbtacks or drawing pins if you want, but I'm a bit paranoid about my work. I did use them when I was at uni, that was all they gave me, but I always had the fear that they were going to rust at the edge or something. So I use just plastic headed. Just the fact that it's plastic, not brass or whatever, makes me happier that it's not going to bleed. Okay, sorry, rust. So you put your piece of work on here. Now I'm probably going to do another 2 samples on this bit of cloth. I could damp stretch this cloth 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. It wouldn't do any damage whatsoever. So I'll damp stretch it today, and I'll damp stretch it again when I work more on it. That's common practice to damp stretch at almost every stage. Okay, I damp stretch stuff all the time because I like things on my blog to be damp stretched. Because if you've never done this before, it makes such a difference to your work. It makes it look so beautiful and it makes the stitching stand proud and everything. Please try it if you've never done it before. So what you do, my only concern today is where I said before about that scoring it with my needle might have damaged the silk, and I don't know if I pull it it'll come undone, but I just have to go with it. I can't worry about that because I can't do anything about it now. So start at the centre bottom, then directly opposite, pull, and see the stretch in that, can't you, and pin, and work centre left to outside or centre right to outside, whatever you want. The point being that you work the centre outwards to one side, then the centre outwards to the other side, and every pin you put in, put another one directly opposite. Okay, now there's not a lot of embroidery on here. If there was a lot of embroidery on here, these pins would have to be a lot closer together. I would say these are about 1/2 inch apart, but I have done work in the past where the pins needed to almost be touching in order to stretch it adequately because of the tension, because there was so much embroidery on a piece. So, but you can gauge that while you're doing it, and when you've finished, when I've done all this pinning out, I always go back and check anyway if there's enough pinning been done, if the surface is as pristine as I want it to be. So you'll feel the stretch, and if you pull too hard, your pins will fly out, so you'll know that you've pulled too hard. So just pull, just stretch it, okay? You're not riving it, you know what I mean? You're not like as if you're trying to rip it that hard, but you are actually stretching it. Okay, so then from centre to the other side, so I'm going centre right, and again exactly opposite with your pins. Okay, exactly opposite with your pins. Right to the outside. Now you can probably see now how much better that looks already. And that area there doesn't seem to be degrading, so that's good. I do like these. And then the last one in this corner, and the last one in that corner, and then you do exactly the same at the sides. So I'm going to do centre to top, pin, other side, directly opposite. This is when you really start to see. And this is what I said to you about leaving yourself a margin around the outside for your pinning out and for your hemming, because these pinholes will be prominent on here when you take it off the board. Go directly opposite. And another. And another. Can you see how lovely that looks, all stretched and neat and not creased or rumpled or anything? Crumpled. It's not very straight, this piece of cloth. It's a bit off here, but it's alright. Right, and then from the centre to the bottom now. Now sometimes it gets hard to pick it up when it gets really stretched because it's very flat against the board. So what I do usually in that situation is, because I can hold the top of this pin adequately, I use my pin, put my pin in and then pull it. That works as well, if you can't quite get your fingers under it. Do that. Can you see what a difference this is making already? But then if I was to just do this and then take it off the board, it wouldn't look any different at all. It would just go back to its original state, which is no good. There's a mark on it there. I don't know if that's a slub. Sometimes you get slubs in silk, don't you? And then the final two. So one over here. And one over here. Now what I do is I have a look at the surface, take these off, and see if I can see any bumps or anything that aren't quite stretched out. And I can't, there aren't any on there, but if I could, say there was one there, then I would just put a pin in there and pull that. And if that took away the bump, I wouldn't need at this stage to put one directly opposite that. If that facilitated getting rid of that bump, that would be alright. But I always check and look and make sure I'm not missing anything. And like I say, maybe I'd need a pin here, so I'd put another pin in there. And if that got rid of that bump, then I wouldn't have to do it directly opposite. So just examine your surface before you wet it. So then you get this. Now you don't want to wet this like you're dropping it in a basin full of water. And mostly your cloth will show when it's damp, so just spray it. You even have to wet the areas that haven't been stitched, because otherwise they'll dry at a different tension to the bit that's the bits that are wet. So the whole thing has to be wet. Now I can see it absorbing into here. Can also see some dry patches where I usually give it a couple of seconds to see if the water seeps into those dry patches, and it isn't. So a little squirt there, one there, and I think that's it now. Now what will happen is, if you've got a very thick area of stitching, any water that you spray on top of that will eventually soak through, because this has to be left for hours now. I usually do it before I go to bed and get it off the board in the morning. But I would say, depending on how warm your house is, what time of year it is, etc., minimum of 6 hours before you remove it. Okay, and that's it. Just leave it like that so it's dry. Don't stand it up either, because all the water will run to the bottom if you stand it up. That looks dry there actually. All the water will run to the bottom, and you want it to be evenly wet and evenly absorbing and evenly drying, so leave it flat. Okay, and we use this table I'm on for our meals, so I take it off and lay it flat on the floor, but I always keep it flat, so that's important as well. So that's damp stretching. Now please try it. If you've never done it before, please try it. Please. Even if you only do it once and you hate it. I don't think I've ever had anybody who hasn't liked it. I think I had one person who was a bit iffy at the first, but then they came round to it. So just try it at least once. The new people among you. Okay, I'm going to be back at the weekend with another video, with more videos. Okay, I better go and stop talking because I won't have anything to write on the blog.